Hello, I'm Maria Hall-Brown. Welcome to Protest and Promise. Well, we began this show in the summer of 2020 to really give the opportunity for young Angelenos to have their voice heard and to also learn about our political leaders and our community leaders that should hear what they need to say. Well, today we thought we'd take a different approach. Today we thought we would actually just check in with our young Angelenos to find out how they've been coping, what their challenges have been, and how their lives have adapted since all of this started almost 2 years ago. So I'm delighted to be joined today by Bridget. Hi, nice to see you, Bridget. And Devin, great to see you. Allison, how are you? Ryan, it's lovely to see you as well. And Camry. Camry, I feel like we've had a lot of experiences together, so great to see you. The beginning of a new year, I think all of us probably thought that by now things would have either stabilized, gotten back to normal, or felt a little less stressful. But I imagine that the new year didn't bring a lot of changes in terms of stress. So let's go ahead and talk about that a little bit first. Camry, how has the last year and a half been, and how are you doing?
The last year and a half it's been rough. 2021 was definitely a rough year, but I feel like my mindset had kind of adapted or evolved with what I was going through. I graduated from college, last year, so it was a big year in that sense as well. I was the first in my family to graduate from college. That was beautiful to experience. I just found out that a documentary I produced last year during the pandemic, during my senior year, just got selected to be screened at the Black LA Film Fest this year. I've been getting my producer credits up. I've produced another podcast, a TV series. So just working a lot, has been the majority of what I've been doing.
Wow, the list of reasons to congratulate you right now are wide and vast, but I'm going to begin with, congratulations on graduating from college and being the first in your family and all your film work too. We'll get to that in a few minutes, but I want to make sure I have a chance to talk to everybody. All right, let's try for Ryan. How are you? What have you been doing, and what are some of the things that you've had to adjust to?
Times have been tough, honestly. It's been quite a challenge. I had to move back home with my parents because of the pandemic, and having to deal with a bunch of health issues with COVID, and helping my parents out because they were positive for a point of time. And so I haven't been doing any schooling. I graduated in 2019. As far as work goes, I've been doing some background acting, and I'm going to be doing some guest star appearances in a web series. And I've just mostly been kind of hiding out in my room, trying to be safe.
Well, yeah, that's a big thing. And you talk about taking care of your parents during COVID. I mean, and there would have been, I'm sure, absolutely no way in the world that when you were looking at the trajectory of what you would do after you graduated, that coming home and being a health caretaker would have been part of that plan. Was it hard?
Yeah. Definitely didn't see it coming. I had plans to actually move towards LA, but now I'm a little bit more far away. So I got to make my way back, but it's all good. It's all in the works.
Yeah. Let's say hi to Bridget. Bridget, hi. Well, Bridget,
Hi.
I know that you've had, some really interesting ups and downs over the last couple years. We've talked about them. How are you now?
There's definitely been a lot more downs and ups, which really sucks. But something I'm really proud of is that my short film that I did in the summer of 2019 won an award. So that was really fun. It recently won at the Real Festival. But I think I've just been focusing a lot on my mental health since I don't know, that's kind of just been something I've struggled with. And also burnout from being like an activist and protesting for BLM, which kind of took a lot of my my mental capacity, you know. Um, and so I had to take a break from protesting, and I eventually ended up fostering cats. And as you can see, my friend here, Apollo, has joined me. He's my failed foster cat.
All right, well, we have lots to talk about, but let me have a chance to say hi to Devin. So, Devin, you are actually starting a new chapter of your life in the fact that you are in your freshman year of college. But if you look past that, which is heroic in all ways, and look back, how's the road been getting there?
Getting here was rather strange because USC was my kind of dream school. My mom graduated from USC. My dad worked at USC, and that was it. You know, USC was the end goal. And then when you have to start considering alternative schools, it's a bit heartbreaking. But I'm really happy with kind of the journey that I took to kind of get to Chapman. Because I got into a lot of the schools that I wanted to, but USC was never as open to having me there as I wanted to be there. But it taught me a lot about kind of refocusing on what my priorities should be,
Right.
and kind of just letting the world work its way over me.
I think that's a lesson a lot of us have had to learn over the last 2 years, that nothing is as we hoped and nothing is as we planned, but we also can make new plans if we want. Well, I want to ask you a bunch more stuff, but let's go ahead and let's pop Allison in there so we can get a little introductory hey. All right, well, you have had a lot to look at in the real world scenario for the last 2 years. How are you doing, and what's been going on with your life personally?
I've been doing good. It's been, since the last time we've talked, there's been a lot of development going on. Thinking back to when the series kind of first started, I realized so much growth has happened within myself and in the area around me. I was a transfer student. I went to community college, and at the time, I think we were talking, I think I got accepted to a bunch of universities, and I ended up picking UCLA. And so I believe we were talking midway through last time, when I was still at school, and now I'm about to graduate in June.
Wow.
And it's kind of everything throughout the year is kind of built up, and now it's I'm gonna head out into the real world, and I'm gonna be one of the first, because my parents didn't get a college degree, so one of the first people in my family to get a bachelor's degree. And throughout my time at UCLA, I've been focusing on doing research and understanding why, specifically in political behavior, why do we make the decisions that we make. But my concentration has been mostly on communities of color. So thinking about why Latinos are more likely to vote for policies that are pro-immigration or such, to keep it kind of simplified, kind of understanding how we think politically. And so being able to realize how much growth has happened since then, I've been doing pretty good.
There's a vast array of subjects we can talk about, but since Allison brought it up, we started talking because of civil unrest, but we can't deny the fact that the pandemic has definitely been a huge player in every corner of our life. How have you all managed the pandemic, and did you feel as if it was going to abate and go away? Has it really impacted your existence? Are you aware of people and people close to you that have been ill or you've lost? How has the pandemic affected your life? And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to ask Ryan first. How has the pandemic affected you, if it has at all?
I would say it's kind of created a
Well, we talked about your parents. Yeah.
Yeah, it's created a layer of risk that I feel I wasn't as aware of before going out, no matter where it is, and I'm just very self-aware of where I am and where other people are, and it's just a lot of more anxiety, basically.
It has been anxiety for you. And has
Yeah.
that changed your behavior at all? You know, you say you're aware of going out and the risks involved, and obviously caring for your parents when they had the virus. But has it stopped you from doing anything, or has it made you mad, or what are some of the things that have directly related to your life?
It's definitely been a barrier. Um, like I said, I barely go out, and when I do, I'm already thinking about like all the things that could possibly happen. Like I could catch COVID and bring it back to my family who are immunocompromised, and so it's just I have less fun, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. Oh. Well, okay, and now I'm going to ask Bridget, because I know, you know, Bridget was very active going out in the marches, and now she's said that she's home. So has this been your own personal emotions that have stopped you, or has COVID really impacted your existence?
It's definitely impacted me, especially since before the pandemic, I was very, I guess, active in the field I thought I was going into, you know, the film industry, and how I was always invited to premieres of my own film and screenings and things like that. And kind of when that paused, it kind of felt a lot of like, I guess I felt lost. And then, you know, the civil unrest and the Black Lives Matter movement. And I feel like racial injustice has always just been in the back of my mind. Like, it's always been something I've been passionate about. And, you know, and then I did end up stopping going to protests since both of my parents are like type 2 diabetics. So they're like, yeah. So that sucked. But, and then I also ended up getting sick with COVID myself. And it was very early on. I luckily didn't have bad symptoms. And, you know, I just always took the pandemic seriously. Like, I remember reading about COVID-19 when it wasn't in the States yet, and how, you know, the first few people that took it seriously were called paranoid, and everyone was like, no one was worried, you know, not that many people were worried. And, you know, when I finally like went to my parents and we all decided to take it seriously, and you know, I forced my dad, who's an essential worker, to take masks to work, and he was one of the first people to wear a mask to work. Yeah, and you know, my mom and I also handmade a bunch of masks for him and his coworkers.
Right.
And you know, we just, like, me and my family kind of just decided, like, this is something we're taking serious. And you know, as soon as the vaccines rolled out, like, we were the first people in line. Like, we never wanted to lose anybody, since loss has kind of affected our family before the pandemic. And you know, we were all just like very happy that none of us, you know, like, when we had COVID, it wasn't something bad, and no one was hospitalized.
That's good.
Yeah. And so, yeah, it's kind of just like made my family and I kind of prioritize our health a lot more, and also like how important family is to us.
Right. Well, stay safe. Definitely stay safe. You know, when you were talking about your career and, you know, what you wanted to do in the film industry, it made me think of Camry, you know, you've been able to sort of start your career after school, which of course is in production. Were you worried that production was going to stay shut down, or that there would be a haphazard stop and start? I mean, how has the pandemic affected your goals? Because you're a very goal-oriented person, and you've definitely, you know, taken the reins and run with it. So when somebody else started to grab the reins away from you somewhat in terms of this virus, did it affect you, and how are you doing?
Thank you. Honestly, to be honest, no. I tend to kind of live in my own head my own world sometimes. So when this happened, it actually made me think more. It made me want to think creatively. It made me want to take better care of my body, to watch what I eat. I don't eat out, so that didn't bother me. Things closing and not being accessible to people who aren't vaccinated didn't bother me. I'm like, okay, well, I pour into myself by going into nature, by going to the park, by going on hikes, you know, things that don't require, permission to be free. It made me think more entrepreneurial as well for work. It made me think, okay, well, how can I make sure that I'm taken care of regardless of whatever the world is doing? It also made me think it made me want to understand how the world works, because I think a lot of people in the world don't understand how the world works. And I think the pandemic, the virus, made people like want to like read into like all types of things. It made people want to look into politics, the laws, and do we have to do this, or so it really just made me want to be more independent of the world, to be honest with you. I like to be free. I'm an Aquarius. We don't like to be controlled by anything. So that was my outlook on it. And I've had COVID last year. My family has had COVID. My grandmother passed away from COVID in 2020. So it's okay.
All right. Well,
yes.
As of the moment that we're taping this, we both almost have a birthday. So, all right. Devin, now you are in a creative realm, and you're obviously you get to be actually at school, but and although you're at the school that you should be in, I'm sure, based on the way the universe works. How has COVID affected you?
Well, in 2020, not really as much, aside from school and whatnot, going online. But this year and like the past couple of months, I've just been dodging COVID left and right. My friend got COVID, and then she was actually an actress for a short film that I was making, and she was the only actress. It was this experimental take on a Macbeth monologue. So I had to shut it down, and she was going to Hofstra in New York, right, like the next week. So that fell through. And another friend of mine, she got COVID because her family was constantly going places, and then my sister got COVID, and she's okay. So I've been in like almost really close contact with all these people, but thankfully I haven't gotten COVID at all. But it's been very crazy with how much exposure people are getting and how rapidly it's spreading, and yet not spreading in my case to me or anything like that.
Did you think we'd all be past this by now? Did you ever think of it that way, or did you just sort of, you're accepting it as it's coming?
I think that with the way that our country works, that there was probably never a chance for this to ever really be stopped, early 2021, because there was a period of time earlier in the pandemic where cases were at an all-time low. The vaccine was getting rolled out, people were not getting sick as much, and everybody it kind of felt, at least, like everybody was forgetting about the pandemic. Granted, globally that was not the case, because in India their cases were skyrocketing while ours were going down, because the country was refusing to give vaccines out to quote unquote third world countries. And then various variants started arising, so then our cases skyrocket as well. And now I feel like we're living in a crazy place. People left and right are just fighting something that probably could have been stopped and prevented at a certain point, but with the way that our systems are in place, that was not a possibility in my mind. So now I'm really just rolling with the punches, trying to be as vigilant as I can, and see where things go.
Your political viewpoint's interesting, which is going to lead me to Allison, because of course that's been her area of focus. Allison, you have had probably the largest petri dish on the planet, or in the last 100 years, to sort of see how politics and the way political entities behave and the way people's belief systems behave in terms of shifting the dynamics of the world. I have no doubt that all of your classes have been incredibly, sadly, energized by people's behavior in this point in time. Do you focus on that somewhat, or are you still kind of looking at things from a historical standpoint prior to the pandemic?
I don't really look so much so like in terms of the pandemic, but like for sure it definitely has impacted people's opinions on certain policies. I'm sure it's definitely made people more, I guess, considerate or compassionate about certain policies and point of views, especially with the civil unrest that like occurred in 2020. And like with the pandemic kind of taking away people's lives or like demonstrating the inequalities that exist in this country, I would say that politically we definitely have changed for the better, and the United States is definitely could be on a path of like heading towards becoming a more empathetic or like progressive type of country. But at the same time, it also comes with like there are people who are going to want to push back against like certain policies, and like that's kind of been the nature of this country for the last 100 years. When I was thinking about like the beginning of the pandemic, I've heard people say this is going to be kind of like the Spanish flu that happened in the early 1920s or 30s. I can't remember the exact time frame, but like it extended for decades. And like politically, like I believe around that time, we'd had like various presidents in office, if I remember, like different Democratic parties. But I would say that based on like how things are politically, we are definitely like a polarized nation. People have really acknowledged that. And like with this protests that have been happening, I think it's made us more aware of injustices socially, especially against communities of color, especially against a lot of communities in the United States. And so I would say like, even through all the bad that we've been experiencing, all of like the terrible news we hear about on the media, we're definitely on a right path to like have more justice brought to these communities and bringing more resources to people than we probably wouldn't have done like in the early 2000s or like way back in like the early 1920s or 30s.
Yeah, the imperative to shine a light. Absolutely. Well, then you're going to bring up a good point, because we're going to run out of time, but I want to end on a positive note, like you are actually moving towards a positive note. So if you could encapsulate in a short amount of time, Allison, what are your hopes for the coming year? And hopefully we won't have another 8 years of this if it's actually going to be a decade-long thing the way the Spanish flu was. But what are your hopes for this year?
I'm pretty hopeful that this year we're going to have definitely better representation, at least in California. I believe in Los Angeles, there's going to be a mayor election coming up this year, if I recall, or next year, one of these coming years. And like a bunch of council members in Los Angeles are going to be up, like some of their seats are going to be up for election or re-election. So like for people who live in LA who are seeking kind of representation, I'm pretty hopeful that we'll be able to get more adequate representation, because a lot of like access to resources that we get starts at the local level. So when more people turn out to vote, when more young people like me and everybody on this call go out to vote, then we're voting to make a change to like the inequalities that we've seen, that we've become more aware of because of the pandemic.
Got it.
And so I'm pretty hopeful for change.
All right. Ryan, what are your hopes for the upcoming year?
I'm hoping that we're able to all hang in there collectively and push through to make it to whatever wall is going to come next, because we deserve to see what's out there.
Camry, I have no doubt that your goals are pretty lofty, but what are your hopes for everybody in the next coming year?
For everybody, I hope everybody connects deeper with themselves and with the people that really mean, the world to them, the people that, care about them no matter what, not their jobs, not things outside of like genuine love, but to like just keep on loving each other and helping each other and be kind to your neighbor, speak to each other. Yeah.
Bridget, what are your hopes for the upcoming year?
I definitely hope that like a lot of people see how um, how things can change for the better, and how not all change is bad, and that the world isn't run by like angels and demons. It's kind of more complicated than that. um I don't know. It's just I feel like it kind of a lot of people were at each other's throats for the majority of the time. And as from someone that's like very like uh I don't know how to say it. I guess tangled in the political world and my political ideals, and I have very strong opinions. I think it just like exposed that I'm not the only one,
Yeah.
or like the right is the exact same way but worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just hope that a lot of people know that the differences that we all have isn't necessarily a bad thing, and that you know that people stop political politicizing like a virus and a mask and quarantine. Like, I don't know, it's just one big joke to a lot of people, but yeah, I hope that a lot of people can look past that.
You got it. All right, Devin. Sorry, what are your hopes? You get the last word, sir.
Well, I really hope that this year and every year after, we start seeing some major educational reform throughout the country, because the lack of quality education, especially in southern states, is ridiculous. And that has led to the delayed response to climate change, to the pandemic, to everything that's going on. And I really hope that we start seeing new generations of activists and politicians that are willing to accept scientific fact and not create alternative facts for their own agendas, but that we start acting as a unified global community.
Well, I have to say that my hopes for the future are pretty strong based on just listening to you guys. I know I've said this before and I will consistently say it. Your voices are strong, your voices are clear, and your voices are important. So thank you so much for taking the time to hang out with me a little bit today. And it's magical to watch you grow and develop and become incredibly important people in the world, because you all are. And I can't thank you enough. So we'll see you next time, okay? All right. All right. That's a wrap on this remarkable Protest in Promise.